Well, hello, lovely humans, and welcome to the very first episode of the Lovely Humans Club podcast. Which is my brand new podcast. Oh my gosh, this is really nerve-wracking. It's really nerve-wracking. I'm jumping on to give it a little intro. This will sound a little bit different if you go listen to it wherever podcasts are played. This is just for the video over here on YouTube. But I wanted to say thank you. Before we even launch into today's episode, I shared something that I don't think I've ever publicly shared before, and today's the day, and it feels big and it feels scary, but I want to say thank you because this corner of the internet has made me feel so safe and so heard and so seen that I can share parts of my story that I've never shared before because you guys are so incredible, and this is so much more than just some lady on the internet talking to a camera by herself. This is a community that you guys have helped to foster and create, that I can say these things to you. I can feel confident creating a brand new podcast and sharing bits of my soul with you guys because you're my friends. And I want this episode to feel like we're having a cup of coffee together. I do have a request though, if I may be so bold. If you can, go to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review. Ideally 5 stars would be great. Starting a brand new podcast is difficult. It's really hard to get it off the ground. And I know because I already have 2 of them, which is fantastic, but they're both wedding related and I wanted something different. I wanted a place where I could just talk to my friends, where I could just sit down and chat with you. And so that's what this is. That's the hope of this, from entrepreneurship to homesteading to infertility to mom life and everything in between. So if you can, go leave this review somewhere. I would really appreciate it. So without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. I have kind of been dreading this day and simultaneously looking forward to it, like the most bizarre duality of feelings. When I first started doing YouTube years ago, someone was like, you should do a Draw My Life video where you just like explain your life. And from that moment, I was so crippled by this thought, knowing that one day I would probably be sharing my whole story. And it's not anything that's like groundbreaking or anything extremely noteworthy, but there is something that I've never really talked about ever on the internet. And I have hemmed and hawed and been so concerned about talking about this because I probably over-dramatized it. I'm probably over-dramatizing it right now because I didn't want to hurt my daughters. So, for the very first time publicly, I am sharing that I was a single mom for years. And I kind of kept it quiet because I didn't want my daughters to feel... I didn't want to share their story without their permission. So this has been on my heart, and I know that there's so much to this story that God is going to use for his glory, for sure. I know that I've been meaning to talk about this, and I don't mean to over-spiritualize it right off the bat. Like, we'll get into the meat and the potatoes about me. I just need to kind of word vomit at the beginning to get some of this out so you can kind of see my perspective and where I'm coming from. So I knew that I'd be making this. I knew that I'd be saying this. This has been pressed upon my heart for years. But I was nervous to bring it up to my daughters. So today, I walk up to them and I was like, hey, can you guys come here for a second? They're like, yeah, Mom, what's up? I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to talk about being a single mom. But I've never mentioned on the internet anywhere that I was a single mom. I've never said that out loud. Not that I can recall, at least. Like, I've been very hush-hush about it. I mean, obviously, if someone looks at the timeline of things, they'll probably put 2 and 2 together. But I haven't outwardly just talked about it. So I bring it up to the girls. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, no, I've never talked about it. And Isabella goes, really? Like, no, I've never said anything. I just wanted to protect your story. And, so I want to know if you're okay with it. And literally both Olivia and Isabella went, yeah, Mom, of course we're okay with it. Like, we had a rough patch in life. We don't remember it. We now live the best life ever. Like, talk about it. I hope it helps somebody. And I was dumbfounded. So, with all that in mind, welcome to the real story about me and how I got to where I'm at today. Why am I sharing this? 1, because I feel like you're my friend. And I feel like I've kind of like kept this piece of information. Again, it's not like it's radically overtly private or anything, but like, I just feel like I share so much of my life with you and I just don't talk about this. But it was such a poignant part of my life. So 1, that we could just have a cup of coffee together and talk about it. 2, that you could be encouraged if you've been here or if you know someone who's been here. And 3, that you would know that like no obstacles are insurmountable. Yeah, So without further ado, let's just jump right on into it. So I grew up in Southern California, in Orange County, California, which is like, it's the Orange County, right? The Real Housewives of Orange County. I went to high school with their kids. Actually, junior high and high school with the Keogh? What's their last name? I don't know. Yeah. Kara was a year younger than me. Why does this matter? It doesn't. It's not a claim to fame. Grew up there, was animal obsessed, like obsessed from the very beginning. I remember I have this stuffed animal that has like been passed down to my children. That is a golden retriever. I would like walk it around with a rope to show my parents that I was responsible. I'd be like, look, I'm walking a dog. You should get us a dog. I'm walking it. You should look. And then I'd put out a bowl of food and water every morning. And I don't know how long this lasted, but in my mind, I feel like from a child's perspective, I feel like it lasted for forever. I would have sworn up and down that I was going to be a vet. Would have sworn up and down as a child. You asked me what I want to be? Veterinarian. That's what's up. My two idols, and this is going to bring back some memories for a lot of y'all. My two idols were Laura Ingalls Wilder and Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Jane Seymour can do no wrong. Goddess. She is, which is really funny, like saying all that out loud right now. And if y'all know what my current life looks like, I don't necessarily believe in manifestation, but if I did, these would line up very nicely, right? And it wasn't until I saw my uncle perform like a little, what was he doing? He was washing out a wound on one of their dogs who had gotten into a fight with a coyote. They lived in a rural place in Southern California called Fallbrook. That I went, I don't think I want to do this. But I love the animals. I just don't want to do this. And another huge part of my life was church. My dad was a senior pastor for most of my growing up career, from when I was 5 to a freshman in high school. He was a senior pastor of an incredible church, and we had a bit of a messy exit, to put it lightly, but that's not my story to tell. All I know is that God is good and grace is real, and we got through it. But that's when I became heavily involved in the youth group at our new church. Became a youth leader, helped run events. So this kind of gave me the taste of like what events looked like. I'd watched my mom host all of these events growing up, right? Like, my dad is notorious for, or was, maybe kind of still is, for being like, hey, we have 20 people coming over after lunch or after church for lunch. And my mom would be like, okay, I'll just throw something together then. Thank you so much for the heads up. And watching her put together these events where people came to her home and they felt so comfortable and they were so happy to be there, I watched how she made people feel. And it wasn't until I was older and I kind of dissected it that that's what I was so drawn to when it comes to events. So I learned the timeline of things. I learned moving bodies, right? Like, especially with youth ministry, like middle schoolers are rough, bro. But that's also why I've never been scared of having middle schoolers or high schoolers. I've always looked forward to it because I spent so many years working with youth. Even when I was youth, I was working with like, the couple grades younger than me. So I got a lot of life experience from that. A lot of life experience. I also got some heartache, and I am not here to talk about deconstructing the church. I'm not here to talk about deconstructing my faith. That's so not the point of this. But I did enter into what others have called a prodigal season, and I hate that term. I hate that term so much because there's this implication when you're a prodigal, right, that you have completely forsaken any semblance of faith. You are out there doing all sorts of wrong. And I didn't feel that way in my heart of hearts. I didn't. I just left home. I was dating someone my parents didn't want me to date. And yes, obviously there was a myriad of other probably mistakes that were involved, until I found myself in a really, really, really unhealthy relationship. Drastically unhealthy. Like I had my parents known the full depth of how unhealthy it is, their hearts probably would have been broken. Wow. And I found myself pregnant and alone. And my parents were firm. They said, you cannot come home until you have a job. I said, okay, I hear that. I was living with a friend in San Diego, and he was paying for me, like he was sleeping on the couch and I had his room, and he was paying for me to take the train back up to Orange County to look for jobs. And I get where my parents were coming from. This is one of the best things they could have done for me. I got 3 jobs in 3 weeks. 3 jobs in 3 weeks. I was like, let's go. because no one was going to save me from this. No one was going to come riding in on a white horse with a bunch of money and be like, here you go. So I knew I had to step up and do something. And my first appointment, I had to get proof of pregnancy to be able to go on to Medi-Cal, which is state insurance through California. And I go in for an ultrasound to get proof of pregnancy. And at a certain point, she stops and she goes, huh. I was like, huh, what's huh? What does it mean? She goes, I wonder. And like turns the screen a little. I'm like, what are we wondering? She goes, I'll be right back. And I'm like, cool. That's fantastic. She leaves, comes back in with someone else, and my mom had dropped me off for this appointment. At this point in time, we only had one car for our whole family, so she was literally like just driving everybody around. She was like in the car for like 7 hours a day. It was intense, especially with all my jobs, right? Because I didn't have a car at the moment. And she comes back in with another ultrasound tech, and they start scanning, and she goes, oh, yep. And they turn the screen back to me, and there's a little wiggly body, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And like at this point, I'm like, it's been 82 hours. Could you just explain what's happening? Because neither of you look concerned, but I feel concerned. So if we could quell this, that'd be great. And then they moved the probe a little bit, and there was a bunk bed. There was a second baby on top of the first baby, and there was two. There was two of them, and I was like, this is happening. Okay. So we go out. They're giving me pamphlets. I'm like, I don't even know what to do. My mom calls because it's taking a really long time. Because again, remember, she's picking up and dropping everybody else off. So she's like, hey, what's going on? And all I say is, there's two. She goes, there's two? There's two. There's two. There's two? We had an entire conversation only using those two words. There's two. There's two. There's two. There's two. And a switch flipped. I was like, and obviously I'd already hustled and I got a bunch of jobs, right? But it was like, okay, this is go time. And I did the food stamp thing. I did the WIC thing. We were stretched thin. My parents charged me for childcare. They charged me for rent, as they should have, you guys. Like, they were supporting 3 extra people in their home, and of course I'm supplementing as much as I can with WIC and stuff like that. But we reached the point where, post-crash of 2008, my parents had money tied up in real estate, and it kind of all deflated to the point where they're like, hey, we got to sell the house. This was one of the darkest seasons of my life, this pregnancy. Multiple family members were not even speaking to me. I was so ashamed and so shamed. Someone close to me said, pregnancy is like an adult hickey. Everyone looks at you and knows what you've been doing. My grandparents gave our family a car, but said I couldn't have it, right? Because I was making so many poor choices. If you're listening to this version, there were air quotes there. Finger quotes. So my brother got it. My brother was in high school at the time, but I wasn't allowed to drive it. And my dad being a senior pastor, I just felt shame. Not just because of his role, but also because of who I am, my personality. If you're into the Enneagram at all, I'm an Enneagram 3. We are on the shame triad. So it is very easy for me to be ashamed of myself. And then put that person in what's considered probably one of the most shameful situations, right? And it was dark. Now, for me, in my pregnancies, I have a very weird condition. I've talked about it on my channel before. It's called an irritable uterus. It's the worst name ever. But basically, I have a lot of practice contractions, which is basically like feeling like I'm in labor pretty early on. So with the girls, I had it at about 20 weeks. Silas, I started at 19 weeks. And with Amelia, I started at about 14 weeks. Having intense contractions, basically starting, well, not as intense in the beginning. Anyways, so I had to go on medical leave from work. So my mom and I would just sit and talk for hours. And it was like the most cathartic and purgy. You guys, we went through some things. And we talked about my prodigal season, and we talked about my ex, and we talked about, how damaging that relationship was and the pieces that it left me in and who I wanted to be for these girls. It was like months of almost intensive therapy, but it's just me and my mom just hashing it out, just having these discussions. So here I am living this kind of interesting, again, duality where I am healing and talking through some of the most traumatic things that I've been through, right? Because the end of that relationship was messy and it was not good. And I'm not going to go into it. It was bad. And I'm working through it, and my mom and I are getting closer, and we're diving into all these difficult details and topics. And at the same time, I have people that aren't even speaking to me because they're so mad at me. And then at the same time, I have these tiny humans growing inside of me, these two perfect little identical baby girls that I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet them. So many emotions. So then they're born, and everyone falls in love with them. If you've seen them, you know why. They're edible. They're contagious. They're infectious. They're like a healing salve on my wounds, on my family. Shoot. People who told me that I should give them up for adoption all of a sudden became completely obsessed with them. And that some of that made me mad. Where I was just like, oh, okay, cool. Now that they're here, like, now you care? Cool. Now, for historical context, the girls were born in 2009. I turned 21 while I was pregnant with them. So, it wasn't like a young teen pregnancy, but that's still pretty early to be having a handful of kids, right? But my parents had a lot of money tied up in real estate that was affected, and they were affected deeply by the 2008 crash. So they looked at me and they're like, hey, we got to sell the house. And I was like, okay. So I got my first apartment with a roommate for a little bit. And this place was, it was called the Promenade Apartments, but we called it Prompton. And in case you don't know what that's referring to, have you heard of Compton? Like in Los Angeles County, where the scary things happen? This was a small version of that. It's Prompton. It had cockroaches. There was gunfire on multiple occasions. There was a man with a knife laying 30 feet from my bedroom slider at one point. I didn't know about this until afterwards because there's cops traipsing through the bushes to try and find him. Just not great. And I can laugh about it now because we don't live there anymore. But it was a very, very trying season. But it was also a very liberating season, for sure. This is when I got my first dog, Trixie. So now this might provide a little more context for people who, when I lost her in 2021, I lost my best friend because I would put the girls to bed and all I had was my dog. My roommate was never there until she moved out. She was always with her boyfriend or off doing things. And all I had to talk to was this dog. Because at this point, I think the relationship with my parents was a little strained. We weren't exactly communicating as much. And so it was really just me and the girls almost all the time. So that dog was literally everything to me. But conveniently, around this time, actually a little bit before I moved out, I also met a man named Elias Wolfer. That dreamy, dreamy man. So it was right around the time that the girls turned 2 that we met. And so when I was moving out of my parents' house, he helped me move into my first apartment. He helped me build my headboard. He built a bunk bed for the girls' crib size mattresses because they slept in my walk-in closet. It's just the most charming little place. I loved it there. And then they moved over into the second bedroom when my roommate moved out. And I knew that this man loved me. I knew that he loved me so much. But I kind of felt a little bit like maybe he was a little codependent. So I kept friend zoning him because I was like, I love who he is when he's secure and connected and we're good. But then he has these moments where he's like, I don't know. I was trying really hard to make healthier dating decisions. So I was like, no, I'm not doing this. But that didn't stop him from being there, from showing up, from just randomly deciding to go to the farmer's market with us on Saturday mornings. And he didn't just fall in love with me. He fell in love with the girls too. He was the one that taught them how to shake people's hands and look them in the eyes. Fast forward a couple years, I get tickets to a Tim McGraw concert, and I take Elias with me. And that night we end up kissing. And the next day he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, listen, okay, I'm trying to make healthy choices with my life, and casually making out with my best friend is not a great idea, okay? And he's like, listen, I hear you, I get that. Counter comment to that, he didn't say that, but it was implied, but I'm going to be one of 2 men on your wedding day. I'm going to be the man you walk down the aisle towards or the man standing next to him. And I'm like, what? You can't be the best man at the wedding. You are my best man. Like, how? I couldn't picture walking down the aisle and having you stand next to somebody. And then I went, oh my gosh. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, of course I can't picture my life without you. Of course I can't picture you standing next to someone when I walk down the aisle. Like, no. And we actually ended up getting out of town that weekend up into Arrowhead, the mountains of California. And got this cute little 1-bedroom place. The girls and I shared the bedroom. He slept on the couch. And the entire weekend I was like, we're getting married. He's like, I know. I'm like, we're getting married. He's like, I know. I'm like, we are getting married. He's like, I know. So this man had known the whole time. He just waiting for me to come around to it. And then we were married, 2015. So oftentimes I talk about how I planned my wedding, and that's when I started my business. And so a lot of people, if they're savvy enough, would go, okay, wait, you've been planning since 2015. You must have gotten married in 2015, but your kids are a little bit older than that. Like, I can math this out, right? I just, again, I've never really talked about it publicly. A little bit after we were married, he had this great job out in Marietta, and so we moved out into like southern wine country, which sounds fancy. We were not near the wines. we were like near them, and had Silas in 2017, an unassisted home birth, accidental unassisted. I did not mean to do that, which basically means the midwife didn't make it in time, and so I delivered my own baby. That's a wild story. That's something for another time. And then, because I felt like I didn't have enough on my plate running my own wedding planning business and having 3 children, I thought, it would be cool, a YouTube channel. And so I launched it. In fact, I actually have video of behind the scenes from my very first wedding, the wedding that I booked in 2015 and happened in 2016. I have footage on a camera. I knew that I wanted to do YouTube for years before I even started it. So if you were one of those, it's like, I would love to start yesterday, okay? Trust me. And little did I know it was going to be a total hit. Like, here I am just talking to brides who have budgets and they don't know how to plan a wedding. And I'm like, I got you. Don't worry. Let's get it figured out together. I'm going to make these videos. And within 4 months, I was monetized. I mean, not like huge amount, but like, that's pretty fast, And so that's when I started to think, hey, maybe I should turn this into a course. Maybe I should like actually build this out into something that people could follow in chronological order, and it could help them plan their weddings. And that's when I launched my first course, the Master Plan, in, I think, August of 2019. What a time to launch a wedding planning course, am I right? Little did we know, a handful of months later, COVID would shut everything down. And this is when I went, okay, I need to put my money where my mouth is, literally. I need to help these people because they can't go out and do anything. They can't plan anything right now. So I ran this huge sale, 50% off. And I kept extending it. I'm like, whoever wants it, get in there. Whoever wants it, get in there. And I didn't tell my husband. I kind of just like had it in another account. I wasn't hiding it necessarily. I just like slowly watched it grow till I got to the point where I was like, I should probably say something. I should probably tell him what's going on right now because this is huge. I had saved up $30,000 from this course that like, I was like, I don't know what to do with this money. What do I do with this money? So I told him. Now, he had lost his job at the end of 2019 and was the job that we literally moved for. And that was heartbreaking and devastating because it was like very interwoven into our lives. And he ended up kind of working for another company for a little bit, working with his dad for a little bit. But essentially, it wasn't like there was a whole, we were missing that entire income. And that's when we went, oh, wait. We are being sustained by the course. So I'm staring at this account, right? And I walk up to my husband and I'm like, okay, I gotta tell him. And I show it to him and he's like, understandably a little frustrated. He's like, this has been here the whole time? And I'm like, well, yeah, but we weren't touching it. Isn't that great? Because I, as a single mom, always had cash hidden around the house. Like not in a bunch of different places, but I always tried to have a couple $1,000s, like $1,000 or $2,000 in cash on hand should anything happen. Because I had lost a job at one point and that was super stressful and really scary. So I always wanted to have this padding to make me feel better. And that's where I learned how to be scrappy with recipes. That's where I learned how to make that scrap stock that I love so much. That's where I learned how to meal plan because I didn't have much money, but I still wanted to enjoy the food that I could eat. So it really pushed me to learn how to provide for my family and provide for my kids in a way that was not just all garbage. They did eat garbage for quite a long time, though. I'm not gonna lie to you. I just got better and learned more and implemented more as the years went on. But that's where this love of like meal planning, prepping things, no sped months, it came from the the grassroots of like being a single mom and not having a choice. But I kind of turned it into a game. Because, you know, if this is the card I've been dealt, then I can conquer this, right? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I have no one else to lean on but him and my dog. Like, we got this. I can figure it out. So to have this like lump sum of money just sitting there, and I show it to my husband, and of course around this time everything feels chaotic, and so we had always wanted to move out of California because we wanted land. My husband Elias grew up with animals, and I've obviously Laura Ingalls Wilder and Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, I wanted to have animals. I wanted to own horses. I wanted to do the whole kit and caboodle. So we decided that we were going to check out Texas, and I actually asked a girlfriend of mine, Mikkel. I was like, hey, where's green in Texas? Because, like, I don't want to move where there's tumbleweeds. Okay, so, like, can you tell me where green things are? And she goes, oh, yeah, actually, Waco is great. Tyler would be another really great spot to check out. And those were the two that I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I know Waco. Waco's got famous people there. So in May of 2020, we fly out here. And we spent a couple days in Waco, and we spent a couple days in Tyler. And the story of how we picked this place is insane. So... this is just the longest story time of all time. How long are we into this? Let's go. We're still going. It's fine. We'll catch up soon enough. So we fly out here. We come to take a look at this house. And, I mean, it's fine. It's a house. I love the property, right? And it's in this charming little town with a fantastic school district, because we thought we were going to send the kids back to school. So we wanted to pick something that had a really good school district. And as we're here, the next door neighbor comes out. We're like, oh, hi, what's up? Nice to meet you. Turns out he owns the place. We're like, no way. And he's a steel guy. So Elias has a background. He's worked in general contracting basically his entire adult life. And so he came over to chat with us. And then Elias went over to be like, hey, I'm going to go grab his business card because, like, he does steel. And, you know, if I come out here and we want to build anything, it'd be great to have that as a contact. I'm like, yeah, go for it. And he's taking a long time chatting with him. And the realtor that we were working with was such a pain in the neck. She's like, well, why don't we just leave him? Let's just leave him. I'm like, I'm not leaving my husband and going with you. Thank you. I'm going to go, I'll go check with him. But she drove us nuts. She tried to tell us that termites were just ants with wings at one of the places we looked at. We're like, no, ma'am, no. So I go over, and as I'm walking up, the neighbor who owns the property that we're looking at, this property that we now own, says something about starting a wedding venue. And I'm like, hi. Sup, I'm actually a wedding planner. We go up to Tyler. We have an incredible time with family friends. Elias falls in love with the town of Tyler. It's so charming. But I knew for me, job-wise, wedding-wise, Waco would make a lot more sense. Because population-wise, it just seemed like it'd be a better fit. And we come back down because Elias ends up finding a job interview. And he's like, hey, if I can find something while we're out here, that'd be nuts. So we meet up with the next door neighbor again. And he's like, I'll do whatever you would like to do to get you into this property because I do not want to own it anymore. We're like, okay, you want to do like a lease to own? And he's like, yes. We're like, okay. So we lock in this bad boy with a lease to own, which basically just meant like we locked in the rate at the beginning of our lease, leased it for a year because we couldn't get a loan, even though we had a gorgeous down payment saved up, right? That like, again, shocked the pants off of me. Remember, I have gone from like nothing where my meals were scraps of the girls' leftovers eaten over the kitchen sink. So like, I've never seen this level of money in my life. And so we had this gorgeous down payment, right? But Texas didn't recognize my work because it's on the internet. And I'm like, I'm not going to lose clients because it's on the internet. And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. So we had to live in the state for a year for us to be able to get a more, it was wild. It was so frustrating. But as we are nearing the end of our year lease and we are now getting prepared to purchase the place, the equity has just skyrocketed. And we're like, oh no. What if our neighbor backs out? What if he reneges? What if he's just like, nope, I can make more money off of this if I sell it to somebody else? Because we locked this place in at $245. You guys, insane. And we went through with it. He said yes. We bought the property that we'd already been living on for a year. And we were like, oh my gosh, we have our first home. Like this, it's God's timing and God's plan with all of this has been so radical. And the funny part is like, The neighbor really never took off with the venue. Like, he never really ended up doing anything with it. Elias never really ended up working with him for steel. He's a great guy. He's totally chill, but just that stuff never panned out. It just was a great opportunity for us to meet and have that conversation. And then, of course, we start having animals. Goats were first, October of 2020. We surprised the girls with those. I have a whole video about that on my channel. They're adorable. And we just kept adding and adding and adding. And to the point that now we have, if you're totally unfamiliar with my life and my story, now we have 2 horses, 6 goats, and the goats just had babies. So we technically have 12, although we will be selling the babies off again. We probably have about 30 birds, 30 chickens, too many cats, 3 border collies, 1 Great Pyrenees, and a rabbit. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. But I knew our family was not complete. Because we had been trying for baby number 4 for over 4 years. How many times can I use the word "for" in a sentence? And it was heartbreaking, and it was gut-wrenching, and it was so sad and so painful. I'm like, I don't understand how I could have twins and then within 6 months of being married, get pregnant with my son, and then just like nothing. So it caused a deep dive into learning about fertility and my health and my wellness and what my cycles look like and endocrine disruptors and so many things. So we will absolutely be diving into more of that here on this platform because it's fascinating, 1, and 2, I'm like, why didn't we learn this in school? What the heck, dude? Like, I don't... So glad I know about parallelograms, but know nothing about the luteal phase. Fantastic. Thanks, guys. And I, growing up, always would tell people that I wanted, well, for a while I said 12 kids. I love children. I love them so much. My mom's always said this, and it's my favorite phrase when it comes to kids. She's never met an age she doesn't like. I've never met an age I don't like. I love my teenagers. I love them so much. They're so funny. They're great to have conversations with. I love my baby. My 7-year-old is hilarious. I mean, the age gap has been honestly like a point of kind of sadness for me. But now seeing them all together, I'm like, absolutely not. So there was a book series I read where it was like, this family lived on a farm, and if you know this series, please remind me what it is, because I would love to find this again and I'd love to share it with the girls. This family lived on a farm, 6 biological kids and 6 foster kids. And the story follows one of the foster kids. What book is that? So for years, I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a bunch of kids. And then I grew up a little bit and I was like, okay, maybe 6 kids. And then, you know, life happened and infertility happened and we struggled with number 4. And frankly, I'm number 5 is not off the table, but I am 36. So, and obviously, like I've already shared, I have really difficult pregnancies. So I don't know where we're going to go with that. I know where we're going to go with that. I want number 5. Let's be real. Okay. I totally do. And that's why I'm still investigating more fertility stuff. Like having a short luteal phase and needing more progesterone and all this very fascinating information that we can totally talk about in another episode. So that brings us up to date to here. Thank you so much for listening or watching. If you watch the video version of this, I appreciate having you here. My hope for this little podcast is that you would feel inspired and encouraged, that you would feel loved on, that you will hear subjects that you're excited about or that will educate you, or that will help you to feel heard and understood. I just want it to feel like having a cup of coffee with a friend, because you guys have been there for me for years and you have supported me and you supported my family, and it's because of viewers like you that we even own this house, that we can even take care of the animals that we have. I mean, like, who knew that I'd be the kind of person that would have a 6-figure online course? I am not Jenna Kutcher, okay? I'm totally not. But I couldn't do this without you. So I thought, why not create a space where we could just hang out and I could just talk to you all the time. So thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please go give it a 5-star rating. I'm specifically asking for 5 stars. Is that too needy? I don't know. But hey, it's a brand new platform. And reviews really mean a lot when it comes to podcasts. So if you could jump on down there, leave a review, let me know what you think. If there's subjects that you'd like for me to talk about, please feel free to let me know. If you want to follow me on any or all of the socials, those will be in the show notes of today's episode. I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for making it feel safe enough for me to share my story. Because y'all have always been awesome. And I love you to pieces. So that's what we have for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Seriously, I want to do that thing where I like run away.
I like make a big announcement and then I run away from the internet, but I feel like we should probably do some sort of Q&A after this. So if you have questions or want to know more about my story, please feel free to ask them. Drop those in the comments down below. I love hearing from you guys. And I think it's understandable to have questions. I think it's fine to be curious. I share my life on the internet. Now I just shared something that I've never shared before. So if you do have questions, let me know. Drop those down below and I will hopefully get to those in another podcast episode. If you haven't done so already, go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave a 5-star review and subscribe because I would love to have you stick around. I'll still keep making the videos. I think the plan is to still post them here. But again, I really want to get this little baby fledgling podcast off the ground and I cannot wait to share more with you guys. I love you so much. Thank you for making this community a beautiful place to be and thank you for being here on my little corner of the internet. And until next time, bye guys.